Spark channel exclusive where I had a few questions and I got some answers. It has to do with the amount of illegal immigrants that actually get snapped, because this is something that, even from my own personal experience, I know for a fact that they do not. And part of the misunderstanding when it comes to this subject, when we talk about it, is the fact that people are always arguing who's considered actually legal and who's not. So I went and asked a few questions, like, for one, how many legal immigrants are in the US? And we only have mostly data up until 2023, but we also have some trends that we can extrapolate, at least what today's outlook is looking like in regards to legal immigration and illegal immigration. So for one, at least as a baseline to get an idea, and this is compared to mind you, the population of 340 million people in the country, about 47.8 million immigrants lived in the US. Okay? This isn't even about legal or illegal. This is immigrants. This group includes naturalized citizens, lawful permanent residents, green card holders, and temporary visa holders. Recent data from 2023 shows nearly 3/4 of all immigrants, so the total amount of immigrants that live in the US, are lawful residents. All right, that means that they're together, you add up naturalized citizens, you add up the permanent residents, the green card holders that went through the whole entire process or got married into the country, and then the people that are either coming here for college or for work, the temporary visa holders. All right. And within at least the year of 2023, this is also something to realize, is only 1.2 million people received a green card. All right. Majority of it was through their family members that are already either naturalized here or live here. Roughly around 200,000 received them through employment. So this has to do with them getting bought into the country, I guess. And so 67,000, so not even 100,000, were diversity visa recipients. And I guess that just has to do with, I don't even know. But even that's not even 100,000 people. That's nothing. That is nothing in the grand scheme of things. And nonetheless, when we add those numbers, when we look at those numbers, so we got more numbers, yay, but more stuff to piss people off with. So we look at that. The total immigrants, 47.8 million. The categories that I listed off, and we can even look through the Pew data as well as the PBS articles that this is reaching into. I have them right here. And as I looked through them, a couple of things kind of came up. So when we add up those categories that was mentioned, that's not a smiley face, it's supposed to be a bracket, but that, in regards to temporary visas, answered another question I was going to put, because I was thinking about asylum, but that's a different category as well. Again, like I said in the beginning, that it honestly depends on your definition and what you consider a legal immigrant and illegal, because when we dive into these numbers and we actually look at what's considered illegal immigration, and then we take that apart and we consider people that are, coming from countries that are suffering through either war, famine, all sorts of very, very reasonably bad things occurring that they don't want to get away from and to seek shelter. And sometimes people have to do by any means necessary, whether it's for themselves or for their family members. That's just how it is. That's life. And if you don't really consider those factors, if you don't understand that, there's different reasons why people might be coming into the country, even if they want to do a legal status or try to do everything else, especially now. I mean, now the whole definition of what's legal and what's not is changed, and we'll look into that as well, because that definitely factors in to these numbers in actually inflating the amount of what would be considered illegal immigrants versus legal immigrants. So, but with these categories listed from, I believe, the data from 2023, we have naturalized 27.4 million, green card 9.9, temp visa 2.4. When you add all of them up, it's 39.7 million legal immigrants, weighed against the total amount of immigrants, 47.8. Okay? When you do that math, it comes out to about 8.1 million illegal, like actually illegal. And this coincides a little bit with the percentage as well. About more than 3/4 is legal, and about this much would be considered illegal. But, and this is where things probably get a little confusing, when we look up on Google, for instance, how many illegal immigrants are in the US 2025, it'll point us to Pew Research because this was done in 2025. But even their statement, I mean, they're saying that it could be higher because of the trending, and we'll look at the trending right now. So this is work. So this is important. Get out of here. I don't want your cookies. So this is the whole talking point that the Republicans used in order to say that there was open borders and all this other shit. When we look from the 10.2 in 2019 to 10.5 to 11.8 to 14 million, I mean, that's a huge trend from 11.8 to 14 million. I mean, well, 12 million to 14 million. It's a change of about 2 million within, I believe this was a span of, what, from year to year? See, this is what I would like more info on. This is the graph. Yeah, year by year. So a change of about 2 million. Now, this is where things where people seem to misunderstand. Total with some protection from deportation. So they cross the border illegally. They do what they can. You see that 2 million increase, right? For protections, those are asylum seekers. Specifically asylum seekers, like quite literally people that are coming from other countries that are dealing with some real bad shit, saying, hey, we need help, even if you can try to argue that, yeah, sure, or they're lying just to get in the country, whatever. That's the number, that's where it's coming from, where total without protection from deportation, so what people typically believe are people just trying to come into the country to take advantage of the workforce or what's here, etc., that only went up by 300,000. And from that trend. Now, from 2024 to 2025, those policies shifted in regards to who's considered asylum seekers and who's not. That screws with the numbers. That screws with the numbers substantially because, like, when we just did the math, looking at legal immigrants versus illegal immigrants, from that total number, we got the 8 million that's represented within the total without protection from deportation. Exactly, right there. You can say, well, sure, open border policy. There wasn't open borders. These people, I mean, they were coming either from planes, whatever, or they would have work visas and they would overstay them because they didn't want to go back to their countries. That's considered, for that last one that I just touched on, that's considered in the 300K from year to year for there. Asylum seekers. So, and it explains a little bit more down here. Primarily, growth in number of unauthorized immigrants who are living in the U.S. with some protections from deportation, such as immigrants paroled into the country and asylum seekers. Okay? Could be women, children, elderly, it could be a lot. But even when we go into these numbers, I mean, some of it starts to make a little bit more sense, how I got that 8 million. And compared to that. And then when we also start asking, how many illegal immigrants are employed? Because before we looked at SNAP benefits and unemployment, this is where the connection starts to kind of come in and kind of make a little bit more sense when we start looking at employment. Because it says labor force 9.7 million within that same year that we're looking at, that were within the labor force. So more employed. Part of that employment could be asylum seekers, people that legitimately got jobs. Some of that could be people that just cross the border and decide to stay or overstay their work visas. and now it's deportations. So it's again, the number had the growth about 3.5 million from 2021 to 2023. But we're looking from 2022 to 2023 is about 2 million, and that was because of all the issues between India, Haiti, all these things where people needed to get out of their countries. Especially their countries are typically much smaller than ours. There's not a lot of room to hide or run from violence or bad governance or anything like that. All right? From crime, any of that. And if you're saying, well, those people shouldn't be in this country, they should find somewhere else to go, I mean, I get your frustration, but that's still falling against the whole talking point, because we have policies in this country to welcome asylum seekers, even if they just come to the border seeking asylum. Or at least we had those policies. And morally, when you think about it, that would be the right thing to do, even if they're immigrants, instead of turning them away. But I guess that's where the disagreements come from, is that some people just don't care about others. Is simply put. Now, so we have those numbers. Where was it? The unemployment rate for undocumented immigrants. Approximately 3% to 4% unemployed. So, depending on if you're taking into account asylum seekers, or if you're taking into account the actual people that are crossing illegally, just for funsies, which is what everyone seems to be mad about, or would like to state that they're mad about, if they're really mad about that in the first place. This number, even compared to the unemployment numbers that we had previously, this number would be just as significant as the amount of unemployed adults against, well, not even significant, it's smaller. Strictly young adults from 20 to 24. Let's see, compared to total SNAP, that's about 1%, right? 1% compared to total population, that wasn't even 1%. Now, young adults weighed 5.2% of SNAP recipients. Sorry, a little lost in the sauce. I'm looking for. There we go. So, 3 to 4% of illegal immigrants being unemployed is similar to the 3% of unemployed young adults from age 24 to 35 that may be receiving SNAP. That's small of an age group, all right, compared to the total unemployment. Mind you, those numbers collectively, it's just 1,242,000. That's what you would probably expect to be the unemployed when it comes to illegal immigrants, compared to 340 million people that live in this country, which is not a lot. And if you're thinking that, well, these people rely on SNAP or whatever, no, because these people don't have social securities, nor do they have addresses. And even if they were living in a household, say that the head of household was a citizen and they were just living there, helping them out, they're not, at least supposed to be, counted as a dependent. In fact, undocumented immigrants are ineligible to receive federal supplement nutrition assistance program SNAP benefits. However, in households with mixed immigration status, eligible members such as a U.S.-born citizen or U.S.-born child, so say if it was a pregnant mother that gave birth here that was an immigrant and would be typically considered a U.S. citizen, that child can receive the benefits, not the parents. Parents don't even have social securities. And mind you, when a child is born in the U.S. at a hospital, typically, or when that child will have to eventually go to the hospital, even if they gave birth in a dumpster or something like that, like clearly they have to go to a hospital to get the proper care they need, unless a doctor is like low-key helping them out. But that's not happening that many times. It's not happening a million times. And that's if you consider the unemployed people as this considers. When we look at the unemployed illegal immigrants, typically undocumented women, children, if that, undocumented women would be considerably higher, almost double the amount of percent of undocumented men. But when we look at illegal immigrants, we're also looking at children. Children don't typically cross the border with, I mean, sometimes with their families, yeah, but the elderly typically are not. And those considerations need to be made when we look at stats like this. I believe, because even if that's the case, they're still not receiving SNAP benefits. They don't have a social security number. They don't have a household. They don't necessarily get considered in those statistics. So it's important to realize that as well. I mean, quite simple, literally a Google search, you can just ask and it gives you a friggin' answer. And it explains to you, right? Just like how I'm explaining to you, because I am familiar with the SNAP process. I know how it works. And even if you're considering a one-off out of not even 1 million people, if that is being claimed as a dependent, that are illegal, whatever, that are in a household, then okay, maybe the numbers are screwed up there. But corrections happen eventually, especially when they have, phone calls, their annual check-ins with the office, or depending on a state-by-state basis, how they go over these things. And also, it's kind of funny when we look at where illegals end up, because a majority of them actually end up in Florida and Texas. A good amount in California and New York as well, but when you look at Florida, Jesus Christ, that's a red state for sure. So it's weird. It's weird. But benefits to eligible family members, some studies have estimated that a small percentage of total SNAP spending, roughly 1% to 2%, goes to households that include undocumented members. But it doesn't mean SNAP is being considered to be paying those undocumented members. And almost exclusively, if anything, if it's the undocumented member is the head of household, it's only being accounted for their children because they have to use their social security numbers in order to make their account on their behalf. Okay? If they're lying about the numbers or whatever, they can, again, look at their taxes. It's all the same system. It gets corrected eventually, one way or another. Isn't this whole rampant people taking over the system thing. In fact, it's pretty corrected when it comes to state by state, allowances. Participation rates found that 7% of households headed by undocumented immigrants receive SNAP. But the report clarified that these benefits are distributed to eligible household members, not the undocumented head. Fraud-related statistics. While fraud is sometimes cited to suggest that undocumented individuals receive benefits, official government data does not support the idea that widespread fraud drives SNAP participation. It's less than 1%. So of that consideration of total payments, less than 1%. It's less than the quote-unquote lazy young adults that are taking advantage of the system, I guess. But even then still, that doesn't make sense, because if they're taking advantage of the system, would that be considered fraud? And this is overall fraud rate. Doesn't even have to do with if they're a legal immigrant or not. This is including that whole, they're taking advantage, like they may be working a side job under the table and they're also getting benefits. Which I think that actually happens more often than illegal immigrants even using the frickin' card in the first place, or even getting a hold of the card. Which is insane. Low fraud by undocumented, exact 0.1% to 0.2%. So you got 1% of the total fraud, and then a tenth of that, if that, is from undocumented workers. So the majority, the 0.9% of the 1% of fraud is actually from people probably working under the table or working jobs and not claiming their income towards SNAP benefits or the SNAP office. Wow, when that's from just the Google search. That's not even just from the data that we're going over, which ultimately supports that. Even when we look at unemployment rates, So if we're considering taking out asylum seekers, which this total number seems to exactly suggest, like we just looked at, when people get the whole term of illegal confused with asylum seekers, people that are going through a process that did exist at least, which was rolled back. So I implore you to check out this Pew report that was listed off, and this also goes into the share of illegal immigrants in the workforce. This goes very in depth to a lot of things, and this is just from 2023 data to try to make sense of now. So, I mean, for the sake of the video at least, it is very, very clear that illegal immigrants do not take advantage. They don't participate in SNAP. There is no way for them to participate in SNAP. That whole statement is bullshit. And honestly, for those people that do end up seeing like who they believe are legal immigrants using a SNAP card, if anything, they're either one using it for their kids if they were born here, which is the majority of those cases, which is still insanely low compared to the total amount of recipients for SNAP. Or maybe they're doing on behalf of the head of household that is maybe allowing them to stay with them. That's it. That's it. They don't. It's not their card, if that's the case. And if they're doing it for that, then that's between the person that holds the card and the person that's a legal immigrant. And if you believe that's wrong in some way, there should be a punishment for that. Probably million, if not, people that would do that. Maybe a few 100,000, if that. Then I don't know what to tell you, because that involves a whole loss of privacy for every single American if you want that sort of surveillance on the program. It's insane. It's insane. The lack of considerations for the reality of other individual situations. So going back to, oh yeah, who is the numbers? The unauthorized immigrant population, so this is just population, grew in 32 states from 2021 to 2023. The 4 states with the biggest growth were Florida, double the growth of illegal immigrants than California. Everyone's saying, oh, California, New Jersey, New York, all these places have illegal. Florida. And mind you, the funniest part is, again, we looked at the unemployment for the illegal immigrants. So there's only like 2 to 3% that are unemployed. Maybe they're using their labor and just pointing the finger at everyone else saying, your illegal immigrants are clearly too lazy. They should be working here, or they should be sent over the border and then come back through Florida or come back through Texas. Even Texas had more illegal immigrants than California. Mind you, yeah, you can use the argument that's a border state, but still. What the hell? So you're losing that argument too. This is from data from 2023. Now, when we take into account the amount of deportations just within this year alone, and the revised data that came out recently. So I'll go over what I looked up yesterday, because there was a big difference, apparently, in the data between yesterday and today. So where is it? So what I looked up yesterday, if I can zoom. I cannot zoom. Can I zoom? I can. But not that well. Okay, cool. Is it this one? Nope. This one. Oh no, that was the ineligible blah blah blah. 47. Yep, alright. I looked up yesterday how many have been deported. Considering fiscal year 2025, so ending September 2025, 340,000 people were actually deported, while 1.6 million self-deported. And this is where this number, we're considering illegals, I suppose, or maybe citizens as well. That I don't have information yet. I can expand upon it actually soon. But this is only the data from September. Since September, we added another almost 200,000. So now it's up to 527,000. The self-deports haven't changed, though. So from that 14.7 million, if we're considering that number, you're already minus 2 million, at least 2.25 million. No, well, 2 and a sixth, about, with the most recent data. Now, the tricky part is it considering asylum seekers? I mean, the answer is yes, because they took away the policies, so that number is now conflated from the 8 million that it would have been to more. And now, as they're changing what's considered to be a legal immigrant and what's not, like the overhaul and the visa rules, as well as considerations for, like, if the immigrant, if they're a legal immigrant, if they have any crime, anything, a parking ticket, just a misstep, or if a officer pulled them over and it was for something that they didn't have the money or resources to fight against, right? Say an officer thinks that they were speeding and their system was off, and the person that's a legal immigrant, mind you, a green card holder, says doesn't fight it, doesn't understand the nuances in regard to American police stops, and just eats the ticket, they're up for deportation now. So, because of the definition changing alone, we're starting to include even more than 14.7 million, and that seems to make the problem a lot worse than it actually is. I mean, absolutely. And then people lose their minds, like, how did this get so bad out of nowhere, blah, blah, blah. It's sowing more chaos from the misunderstanding that, I mean, the definitions of who's considered legal and who's not, mind you, I mean, even back in the 1700s, when people would seek asylum into the United States colonies, they had this similar issue, right? They had these similar considerations. You can, again, check out the Declaration of Independence because they do mention migration as an issue in regards to how the British monarchy controlled the populace, so to speak. How they considered those going to the American colonies, who they wanted to consider being citizens, who they didn't, how they changed their definitions. It's very reminiscent of what's going on now. So, with all these confusing numbers, everything else, we look at those deportations, we had the updated 527,000. None of them are on SNAP. Not a single one. Even the unemployed, not a single one. None of them. Now, if you want to take the unemployment number, so they estimated 9.7 million employed, and this must clearly take into account asylum seekers because this number overlaps what the actual illegal immigrant number would be, depending on your definition or your consideration of asylum seekers. Okay? So that, and plus, I mean, children, even as the report suggests. I do want to find that one bit just to show you what I saw when it came to considerations. Oh yeah, well, besides not even that, the fact that most of the immigrants, again, and this makes sense when you consider Florida's numbers, are not even coming from Mexico. They come from other countries like Venezuela, Guatemala, Honduras, like India, which just also was going through a little bit of wartime stuff. El Salvador went through a lot of shit. Guatemala, like all these places have been through their own periods of destabilization between 2020 to now. That's why we're getting asylum seekers. That's why we're getting exactly what's going on. Okay? They're mostly flying in or taking a boat to Florida, by the looks of it. Because you have almost literally 1 million within a year just in Florida. Out of the 2 million. Or, well, no, out of the total, I mean. I think that's the total consideration, not how many per year. So I'm probably wrong on that. Oh, populations, yeah. So that's the total. Oh, no, this is biggest growth. Never mind, from 2021 to 2023. Oh! Wow, never mind. Yeah, so actually within 2 years, about, wow, holy shit. Almost 1 million in the Florida. It's insane. That, yeah, that explains a lot. Open borders, yeah, it's, I guess, Texas and Florida. Florida, what are you doing? You should have more maritime patrol. Oh man, talk about irony. So clearly, I mean, when we look at the data, when we look at the numbers, it dispels all the talking points that's coming from the administration. And then even when we start looking at unauthorized immigrants with some protection, you know, parole, so parole from countries or parole from whatever, crime and violence victims, these are people that have experienced on the receiving end. They're not the perpetrators of crime, they're the ones that experience it, almost about 1 million. People on parole, about 1 million. Asylum applicants, about 2.6 million. TPS, little over 500,000. Dreamers, the children that are born here, about 500,000. And then border releases, about 1 million. So being released into the country from the border, whether, I don't know, maybe there was mistaken identity, I don't know. I don't know the nuances into that number specifically, but these arguments just don't necessarily line up with what people like to present. Which, I mean, we have 42 million Americans on SNAP. We don't have a single one of the 14 point whatever million illegal immigrants, quote unquote, on SNAP. Maybe if they're asylum seekers and they have kids that are born here, sure. But even then still, I don't believe asylum seekers are even considered part of that because they're illegal. So just big misconceptions. And then when we look at the data that we looked at last week, like just looking at young adults from ages 24 to 35 is only like 3%, is only about 1 million, 1.2 million of total SNAP recipients. Whereas the unemployed number for illegal immigration, so that was the number I was going to do. So that was what, 2 to 3% of 9.7. So 9.7 times 0.0. I'll do 0.3. I'll be generous. 291,000. 291,000. Oh no, that's it's out of employed. Yeah, see, that's the thing that confuses the hell out of me. It's because of the consideration of this, and then the 14 million that are asylum seekers and not, where the actual number of illegals is 8.1. So the numbers are just so skewed because the employed compared to the total, considering asylum seekers, is 69.3. But asylum seekers can also include children, they can also include elderly and disabled, because it doesn't matter. But when we look at the 8.1 million, the people that cross the border willingly, not seeking asylum, just looking for getting into the US system, those aren't kids. Those aren't elderly. Those aren't, maybe some are disabled, but I don't really consider them that disabled if they're able to climb the wall. Oh yeah, here we go. I think this was what I was thinking of. Yeah, so breaking down the some protections for asylum. So this is the other. Yeah, remaining 9.7 million people, 19% of foreign-born U.S. residents, and about 3% of the country's total population do not have legal permission to be in the U.S. This is other data trying to account for today's numbers. So this one's slightly skewed from the 8 million, but I think the considerations are slightly different for asylum seekers or some protections because, yeah, that's strange. It's still not what I saw. What is it? Should have been than the employment numbers. Because other groups, deferred action for childhood arrivals, DACA, which is available to those. I mean, the children is 600,000. The 1 million migrants encountered U.S. Border Patrol and were released into the U.S., typically with orders to appear in immigration court. So they were given, a hearing. So they were allowed. Wouldn't necessarily, by Border Patrol, mind you. Following U.S. policy. So unauthorized immigrants represented 4.1 total of the population. I'm looking for the work numbers. I think it was down here. So it's the states. Most children living with an unauthorized immigrant parent are U.S. citizens who are born into the U.S. So that was consideration of that. And mothers that are pregnant that come in here and then give birth. I'm looking at authorized immigrants less than 5 years in the labor force. Yes, since 2003, unauthorized immigrants have made up 4.4 to 5.6 of all U.S. workers. I mean, where 97% of them, illegal immigrants, are working already. Yeah, where was it? I just wanted to find that one thing to leave off on because it made a consideration for. It must have been here. Nope. Must have been here. Yeah, 3 to 4%. It's important to note that some sources may provide different figures due to varying methodologies and difficulty tracking the population. 3 to 4% is consistent. So unless maybe it gave you the information, because that is, like I said, another issue with even looking this stuff up and looking at what's being presented to you through just Google searching. So you got to make a lot of considerations for what information even Google has access to. I mean, Google's the most wide known friggin' search engine to begin with in the first place. But that is interesting. Where did that information go? 9.7. Of 4.6 million children under 18 born in the U.S. lived with an unauthorized immigrant parent in 2023, up from 4 million in 2021. These children accounted for about 75% of all minor children living with an unauthorized immigrant parent. So, I mean, that right there already tells you that out of all the immigrant parents, I mean, 3/4 of the children were born here, weren't already living with them. And I mean, depending on what you believe and what your definition of U.S. citizen when it comes to birthright citizenship, that changes. But by the end of the day, I mean, these numbers do speak to themselves when we analyze it. Now, what the oh man, this video is ugh. I'm unemployed. Oh, 4 to 4.3 million or less. Can't include children not born in the US. So that 25% we just mentioned, as well as disabled and elderly 55 and up. So that was the amount unemployed. This is comparing. Oh yeah, because I took the 2 to 3% compared to the 14 million. Let me just double check that. So 14.7? Oh no, 14 or 13.7. That's what the PBS poll was showing, is 13.7. Or article, whatever. So 14 times, yeah, 0.03. It's only 420,000. Yeah, see, that's where the numbers just don't seem to make sense. Because if I take that percentage of who's considered unemployed that's illegal at 2 to 3%, so it's definitely taking out children, elderly, and everything else. We're only getting, like, yeah, 420,000. And like I said, that would be adults. That would have to strictly be working, not elderly or disabled adults. Or maybe it would include elderly. Maybe not disabled, though. Or maybe it does. Children, though, I can see that taken into account. Actually, a little more so. Because, I mean, 420,000, 4 to 3 million. So maybe about half of this, I guess, would have to include children. At the very least. And not born in the US, that'd be 2 million. Yeah. So a lot of tough considerations, but again, mind none of these illegal individuals receive SNAP. And even when we compare this to unemployment numbers, it's nothing even compared to when you look at the amount of children that are born here from illegal immigrant parents compared to the total amount of quote unquote lazy, able bodied, unemployed adults. I mean, I guess it's about equal to that, but those are illegal children, so they're, below the ages of either 16 or 18 that are born here that are getting SNAP. It's not their parents. So, it's very interesting when we look at these numbers and look at these considerations for who's illegal and who's not. Meanwhile, already, I guess, over about 2 million either self-deported or, well, 500,000 physically deported, forcefully deported. So, I don't know. I'm sure the budget's not gonna get any better for Snap, that's for damn sure, even if you deport all of them. But yeah, that's about it. It's 44 minutes of blah. I don't know, I'll try to do a short one. Switch it up after. Now I got more numbers. I just wanted to find that one bit that I saw earlier that I cannot find again. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to. This is droning off so bad. I'm curious. This is Wikipedia. Oh, this is as of 2021. Damn, a lot of immigrants came to Florida in 2023. Holy shit. If that's the 2021 numbers, oh my god. amount of immigrants in the Florida like doubled or even tripled. About 8% of children born in the United States, 2008, but 340,000 were offspring of legal immigrants. It's in 2008 though. It's a Dream Act. Yeah, where is Pew Center is a 2014, so this is very old data. And then, all right, the 9.7 million unauthorized immigrants in the U.S. workforce. It is out of the 14 million. Okay, okay. Hmm. But then if I'm seeing only 2 to 3%, maybe that's the rate. Hmm. 22.8. It's the large portion, 22.8% not in the labor force. According to 2025 Economic Policy Institute analysis of 2022 data, this indicates that while the overall unemployment rate for this group is low, many may not be actively seeking work. All right, so this, not in the labor force. I mean, but is that considered children? However, a significant portion is categorized as non-labor force, meaning they're not working and not actively working. This grouping, yeah, students, stay-at-home parents, and others. So kids and students and stay-at-home parents. And this is of unauthorized immigrants. That is interesting. And the sources are EPI. This is in 2022 with 3.1% unemployed and 22.8% who are not in the labor force. Oh, so the 2 million. Yeah, so I was, wow. All right. So that consideration out of the 4, that's interesting. Then unemployed but seeking work. So adults that are looking for work. So yeah, you take out the amount of children, that 0.25% of the children that were born. Huh. So let me, well, this is 2023 compared to 2022, but it's very interesting. Where was it? So much text. 22%. So against the in total US population, it went up 1%. Hmm. And then this is what I was talking about in regards to changes in the rules and who's considered to be legal and illegal, or going through a process from illegal to legal. Removed deportation protections and rescinded work permits for about 500,000 parolees from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Allowed protections to expire for 350,000 Venezuelans and 350,000 Haitians with TPS. Stopped accepting asylum applications. So across the U.S.-Mexico border, specifically, not Florida though. It's interesting. Largest stopped releasing immigrants into the U.S. who are encountered at the border. All right, I mean that's fair if they want to try to reach through the process, but there's no asylum seeking applications, then they're kind of screwed. Because who are you meeting at the border? People from freaking Mexico. The vast majority of unauthorized immigrants, more than 12 million in 2023, either entered the U.S. illegally or with state visa. Another 2 million entered the U.S. legally or were paroled into the country. Protection from deportation provided by programs such as DACA, TPS, or asylum. Yep. And that's are only available to immigrants already in the U.S. So once they already cross the border and they reach out to representatives or whoever the hell they got to reach out to. That still doesn't. Where's the children numbers? That's crazy though. I mean, we have 42 million SNAP recipients, and none of them are either the 6 million with protections or the 8 million without protections. That's for damn sure. The only ones that are actually receiving it are, from immigrant mothers that give birth to children here. Birthright citizenship. That's it. So the only ones that are getting SNAP benefits. I mean, it probably goes by state basis, but Jesus. That just really goes to show that, I mean, even compared to unemployment, as most of them, over 70% of that 14 million are employed, regardless if they're children or not, or elderly or disabled. God damn. Size of the employment. Yeah. So civilian population, so ages 16 and older. So 9.8. Labor force employment status, 9.8. Interesting. That's out of the 14 million. All right, there's the 74.1%. So in the labor force, that much employed. Oh, okay. So 16 and older, so about 2 point. All right, so this is 2.2. So that, never mind. So that is not the children. It does take that into account. 2.24 million. Then add the three, so about 2.5 million not working that are 16 and older. But I mean, the older could include people that are elderly, and it could include the disabled. Interesting. And then when we look at was our disabled numbers in regards to unemployment. It's male, female. Yeah, I mean, the elderly alone that are unemployed, 55 and older, is 1 million. So about almost half of unemployed that are elderly. I don't know, but that's if these are citizens. Hmm. I think this is the other stipulation too. Yeah, no. Does not directly consider legal status. Includes anyone available and seeking work in the labor force regardless of their immigration status, though they do collect data on immigration and citizenship for demographic breakdowns. The key criteria for being counted as unemployed are not being employed, being available for work, and actively looking for a job. Wow, interesting. And so, if you're an illegal immigrant and you're considered in the unemployment numbers, and what we did before was, I mean, if they were legal, that was the consideration. If they were legal and unemployed, so that could participate in SNAP. So that weighs negatively against. Wow, interesting. So the lazy young adults could also be illegals, but those illegals can't get SNAP, so they're not really lazy young adults. So that number is even smaller. Huh. That's very interesting. Holy shit. So that means, in regards to SNAP recipients, oh my god. Yeah, even more are employed than we thought. Because even if we took the unemployed and weighted against SNAP, we're already at 87.5%. We, take out disabled children. They're not even elderly. This is including elderly. When we also, oh my god, wow. So 87.5% of SNAP recipients are actually employed individuals. Definitely with legal status. Legal stat. As you need legal status in order to even get it. And if you're a child, I mean, that is legal, then yeah, you're technically entitled to it. Wow. Wow, that is very interesting. So, I guess overall, do illegal immigrants get SNAP? No. I mean, that's a definite no. And now we even got a better answer to the question, are the unemployed all lazy young men? That's a big fat no. That is a... If we have... I mean, this is a rough percentage, but if we have 14.7 million... So, or 14 divided by 340 million. It's 4%. Or 4.1% as, the numbers are. But when we look at the 2,247,000 that are not in the labor force that are ages 16 and older, that are not children, but unemployed but seeking work. So, So these numbers, so the 2.55, yeah, 2.55 million illegals unemployed. And they're not receiving SNAP. Not receiving. Huh. And we have numbers. I mean, 5,267,000 most likely eligible for SNAP, all unemployed and up, 20 and up. So that's regardless of disability. No, I think that was taken into account, disability and stuff. Huh. Unemployed versus SNAP. That is interesting. It's very interesting. It's total unemployed adjusted for eligibility without disability. So this is taken into age, and this would have been 16 and up. Total unemployed adjusted for eligibility without disability, 20 to 25. So that's 16 and up. And this is disregarding disability. We can include disability back in, and then subtract. Huh. So it's even less. It's even less getting SNAP than just from these numbers alone, if we considered illegal immigrants. It's even less. Holy shit. That means there's even less lazy young men, I suppose. I mean, how the hell are you gonna be lazy and not even get SNAP? They're not eating at that point. The fuck? I mean, I guess they're relying on, I don't know, someone or something. That is strange. That is very strange. More needs to be considered, though, for sure, when looking at these numbers. Mind you, this is still very negligible in regards to the total population in the United States, and even in regards to the total amount of SNAP recipients. Oh my god. Wow. Well, revelations today, a lot of revelations, long ass stream. I'll try to do a short one though after. Anyways, until next time, this is Spark saying